Howdy and welcome to episode 5 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen and today is Thursday, July 21st, 2016. So I've been thinking a lot over the past 2 weeks about, what I want to talk about on each episode. And sometimes I'll have something happen or a thought and think, I need to talk about that on the podcast. But then I don't write it down or make a list, and I think that there have been things the past 2 weeks that I've thought I should talk about that on the podcast, and I don't remember them right now. So what I'm going to do is have a notebook that I dedicate specifically for the podcast, and after each episode, basically I'll have a blank page open, and over the course of the 2 weeks between episodes, I will just write down things that happen or that I think of that I want to talk about. And that way, when I sit down to record the episode, I will have that list of things already created. And probably I am not reinventing the wheel here. I'm sure that others use this method. But it just suddenly kind of came to me. I'm a list maker. I love making lists. Why am I not making a list of things to talk about? So hopefully that will help me remember what to say in each podcast episode. Anyway, I've got a lot of things to talk about today, so I'll go ahead and get into the content. So for today's t-shirt, I have one that the artwork for the shirt is called King Arthur. So I'll let you get a look there at the shirt. So this is a mashup of Arthur, the young King Arthur, from the Disney movie Sword in the Stone, and Thor, so from the Avengers. And what I really love about this, first of all, I love mashup shirts that are able to take two things that I really like and put them together, so that way I can kind of share my love of two things at one time. So I really love these types of shirts, and I have several of them that you'll see over the course of the podcast. But what I really love about this one is that it takes these two stories that have kind of a trial for the hero to go through to show that he is the worthy one, the rightful ruler, the rightful heir, the one who is supposed to be the hero, basically. And both of them use weapons as the means of this trial. So who can pick up the hammer, who can pull the sword from the stone. And I think that it's really clever to put those two things together, since they do have so many, connections and crossovers. And I love that, we've got this image of Arthur who's dressed in basically like a Thor costume, like you might see people, dress up at comic cons and stuff like that. Anyway, so I love this mashup. And I think is really, really creative and clever. But really, I think what it speaks to is kind of a larger, I say issue, but that's not really the word that I want. So this larger idea, maybe, that these stories, although they come from different places, although technically I guess both of them are Germanic stories, a story of Thor and of Arthur. But they come from different places in different times, and yet they have so many similarities. And it's the idea mostly popularized by Joseph Campbell, who was a scholar of mythology and among other things, and he created the idea of the monomyth, basically, that there is one main story. So he created this idea of the hero's journey, and that the hero actually goes through, there are specific kind of parts of the story that the hero goes through. But and I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell. But the idea that a lot of these stories seem to kind of exist in our collective unconsciousness. So now I know I'm going to Jung. But a lot of those ideas. So these stories might have started off in different places, but they have these key similarities. And I think it really speaks to a lot about us, about human nature, about kind of our thoughts on what it means to be heroic in this sense, and also, since it is they are stories, what do we enjoy hearing about? What is it that that also endures? That these are stories that have been around for a long time, and stories that are reinvented, recreated. Because I mean, this, especially the Disney Sword in the Stone, that idea is, you know, 1,000 years old. A story of King Arthur, roughly. And then it gets Disneyfied, you know, it gets created into this Disney movie and reimagined. But it maybe collects a new audience that way. But just what is it about these stories that kind of draw us to them, and keep us coming back for more and more retellings? Because I can't tell you how many retellings of the Arthurian story I've read over the years. Things that I really enjoyed, such as The Mists of Avalon, one of my absolute favorite books, and some things that maybe I haven't personally enjoyed quite as much, and ones that I actually don't have an example of because I usually try to just forget those. But just the idea that all of these stories can be reshaped and renewed, and then you can kind of mash them up together. And although this is just an image on a T-shirt, I kind of wonder about an actual story written out that combines, Arthur and Thor. What would that look like? So if that has been written already and you know about it, let me know. I'd love to read it. And if it hasn't been written about, maybe that's an idea for someone to work on. But I really love this mashup and love that kind of looking back at all the history that's involved in these stories. So I think you'll notice that I am not wearing a shawl for this episode. And the reason for that is because the shawl that I want to talk about is one that I no longer own, and so I can't wear it on the episode. So what I'll do here is I will pop a picture up so you can actually see the shawl that I'm talking about, and then kind of talk about it with the picture. So this shawl is akimbo. It is a design by Stephen West, and I've already shown a Stephen West shawl and talked a little bit about Stephen West, so that's not actually what I want to talk about today. So this shawl, the reason that I do not have it anymore is because I sold it. And the reason that I picked this shawl to talk about today is because this past weekend I just hit my 6-year anniversary on Etsy. So having my shop open on Etsy. And that shop has definitely evolved over the years. So when it started out, I actually had a few crafty things that I sold, but I actually had more like vintage books and magazines. I had some science fiction and fantasy magazines from the 50s and 60s. I had been collecting stories written by Marion Zimmer Bradley, who's one of my favorite authors. And a lot of times I would get on eBay a lot of 12 magazines, the monthly issues for an entire year, and she was one of her stories was only published in one of them, but I had to buy all 12 to get that one. So I used Etsy as actually a way of selling off the other 11, and then I not too long after I'd opened the shop, that's when I started spinning, and so I actually listed my hand spun yarn, and then I would take leftover bits of hand spun and create little mini skeins, and I put a keychain on them, and I sold them as mini skein keychains. And then about the time that my son was born, kind of for the first year or two, that's when I started selling my hand knitted items. And I did a lot of baby things like baby hats and whatnot. But I went through my shawl collection and I posted some shawls for sale. And if you've ever tried selling anything that you've knit, I think you'll fast discover that people don't value them as much as they should be, and you don't get paid the amount that really you should earn for a shawl that you've knit. But I went ahead and sold several shawls, and I did sell some, again, not for what they were really truly worth. And I had listed this shawl for sale. And I remember that this shawl took a lot of work. It was one that I had to kind of push through because even though I really enjoyed the way it looked and the way it turned out, there were moments of knitting it that were a bit of a slog. Things that I just, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of tired of doing this. I just want to get done. And so it really had a lot of work put into this shawl. And I really liked the way it looked. So it sold, and I got it out and packaged it up to send off to the buyer. And it was one of those moments where I thought, maybe I can cancel the sale. I really don't want to send this shawl out. I don't want to get rid of it. I want to keep it. So maybe I could tell the buyer that I had it sitting out to package and my cat got into it and chewed a hole in it. Maybe I could say, you know what? For some reason, I cannot find it. If I ever find it, I will send it to you, but I'm going to refund your money now. And I apologize that I don't have it. Or I thought about just being honest and saying, you know what? I really shouldn't have listed this for sale and I don't want to sell it anymore, so I'm going to refund your money. But that just all felt really horrible to me. I mean, I thought about it from the buyer's perspective. How would I feel if I had bought this thing and I was looking forward to it and the seller said, you know what? No, I'm not going to send it to you. So I thought, you know what? If I wanted to keep it, I should not have listed it for sale. So I went ahead and sent it off to the buyer. And I still regret that one. There were other shawls that I sold that sometimes I wish, maybe I wish I had kept that one. But this one in particular is the one that I really, really regret selling, and I wish I still had. And maybe someday I'll reknit it, but it'll never be quite the same. The yarn that I used is from Julie Spins, so I've mentioned Julie Spins a few times. Indie dyer who is still dyeing, and yarn that I really love and have a lot of and have used a lot of. But I don't think I'll ever be able to really make it the same. And so I'm kind of sad about that. But it's also a good lesson, so maybe value the things that you make. And if you do think that you might want to keep it, or you think, well, I've got 10,000 shawls, what am I going to do with all of them? Maybe really consider some ways that you can, keep them and not get rid of some of the ones that you really would regret getting rid of. So the valuable lesson in this shawl. And I hope that whoever bought it has enjoyed it over the years. Really, really hope that. And is glad that I did actually send it off to them. So I've been thinking a lot over, well, it's been quite a while that I've been thinking about this, kind of the way that I want to both move my business forward and also just think about the way I'm interacting with the knitting community. And I feel very drawn toward the educational aspect of knitting, but not necessarily teaching technique classes. I mean, I do tutorial videos and I think that those are important and valuable, and I like to contribute to the knitting community that way. But I've been thinking about other ways of creating community and kind of helping people. And I've kind of had this tagline for a while, building your knitting skills and confidence, as kind of my goal and my aim and what I've been doing, like with my newsletter that I send out. And so I have a knitting tips and tricks section in my newsletter, and each the newsletter goes out every other week. And I like to either have a video that I record for that or an article that I write that shares a knitting tip or trick. But I want to do more than that. I want to do it a little more often, because the newsletter only comes out every other week. And also I want it to be more of a two-way, conversation rather than just me, always writing something or sharing a video. And so I decided to start a Facebook group. And so the group is actually called Building Your Knitting Skills and Confidence. And the idea is that I have created a series of daily challenges And the challenges will be the same from week to week. So every Monday we'll have a particular theme. Every Tuesday we'll have a theme. And then as the months go by, if there's a theme that seems like, okay, we've kind of exhausted that one, then I might change it. So like Tuesdays is Technique Tuesday. So share your favorite, knitting trick or technique. Wednesdays is WIP Wednesday, so Works in Progress Wednesday. So getting real and honest about our works in progress. So those types of things. And I'm really excited to already have, the group. I launched it, I think, last week on Wednesday. So it's just over a week old, and we already have, I think, 30 members. Which is really exciting, and people that are talking, responding to the prompts and talking to each other, and that's what really gets me excited. That it's not just me talking to you or you talking back to me, but I'm helping, kind of make connections with other people, talking to one another, where I don't necessarily have to, mediate there. You can just talk directly to one another. And I think that's one reason why I picked Facebook. I think we can definitely do that on Ravelry, and I would love to see you guys post in the Ravelry group. But I think Facebook, a lot of us those of us that use Facebook, we're probably on Facebook pretty regularly. And it's a way of just being able to build that community. So I wanted to tell you guys about it in case you're interested. You can, if you go to Facebook, you could probably search for it. But if you actually go, and I will link this in the show notes, to KarenDawnDesigns.com/Facebook group. So I created a link to go directly to the Facebook group there. So KarenDawnDesigns.com/Facebook group. And again, I will link this in the show notes, which you can find at T-Shirtsandshawls.com /episode 5. Anyway, so I'm really excited about this group. I'm loving the comments that are already going, the great tips that have been shared, the people getting real about their works in progress. It's really exciting just over this past week to see what has come out of it, and I cannot wait to just see how it continues to progress and watch it grow. And grow way beyond me. I mean, I've started this thing, but I definitely don't feel like I need to be the center of all the attention or whatever with the group. So just kind of being there to create and have this place for people, including myself, to build our knitting skills and confidence. And that's really what I think excites me. To be able to be even just a small part of that. So please join the group if you're interested in that, and I'd love to have you share your knowledge and build your own skills. So I have a question for Karen this time. If you have a question that you would like to ask me, if you go to the Ravelry group, so T-Shirts and Shawls podcast, search that as the groups, join the group if you haven't already, and there will be a thread that's actually just called Questions for Karen, and you can go ahead and post your question there, and I will answer it on the next episode. So I have one question this time. It comes from A Simple Motif, and she asks, how do you store your hand knits? My shawl collection is getting out of hand, and I need a new way to put it away. And I think this is a really great question. I mean, it kind of ties into what I was just talking about with having a whole bunch of shawls and deciding to sell them and then regretting that. So what do you do with this shawl collection? And I used to store all my shawls in a box, basically. So I would fold them up quite nicely and put them away in a box. And I really didn't like that because I never took out the box except when I had a new shawl to put one away. And I never really looked through the shawls or did much with them. They just sat in the box. And so I decided there has to be another way of doing this. I mean, I would like to actually wear the shawls, and so if they're just sitting in the box, it's kind of a hassle to go dig out the box and dig through it and try to find the shawl. So what can I do to actually both store these and also make it so maybe they're more on my mind so I can wear them more often, and also just kind of enjoy them. And so I'm going to flip the camera around and show you 2 ways that I have been storing shawls. And then after looking at this and thinking about that, I would love to hear your ideas. So maybe you can help Erica out with her question and talk about how you store all of your shawls. And actually, Craft Mouse had commented on this question and said that she said that she's looking forward to this answer. Maybe in the discussion, people could talk about their storage solutions. So in the discussion thread for this episode on Ravelry, I would love it if you would go ahead and share what you're doing with your shawls, and maybe you can have some pictures, or at least, talk about what you're doing with your shawls. So with that being said, here's some of the ways that I store/display my shawls. So this is my craft room / the guest bedroom, which is where I record the podcast episodes. And this is basically a wire that is hung across the top of the wall. And I am able to use little hooks to hang all of the shawls on. And this is really nice because I get to actually see all the shawls from day to day, and they are not just put away in a box where I never get to see them. So that is something that I think that a lot of us probably could do if you have an area in your house that you could use to basically treat the shawls as art and use them as decorative display. So maybe a hallway, definitely if you have a craft room or a guest room, that's a good place to put them. So that is one way of putting them on the wall. I also, let me get closer over here, I also use these hooks. These are the hooks that you use the double-sided tape to tape to the wall. And I like these ones in particular are actually for storing cords. So they actually come off like that. So it's this kind of rubberized type of thing that's very flexible. And it's a good way of, get this back on there, of actually storing multiple shawls. So I actually have 2 on this one hook. And I have one on that hook. And you can kind of put those wherever you want, since it does use double-sided tape and it's pretty easy to remove. So you can definitely hang up a bunch of those. One thing I do want to caution you about, if you're going to use something like that with those hooks, there is a tendency for your shawl to stretch out a little bit, just the weight of the shawl and hanging from those hooks. So what I usually do is I periodically, maybe once a month, maybe not quite as often, I go through and I basically move where that hook is, just to kind of change the drape of the shawl a little bit. So that way it's not always, for years staying up there, hanging from that one spot. So that way there's a little bit of movement, so you're not stretching out that one point. But this also is really nice because if I want to wear one of the shawls, I can just take it down from the hooks and put it on right away. I don't have to go digging through a box to find it. So this is one of the ways that I display shawls. Let me go take you to another part of the house to show you another option. So I am in the entryway of my house, and I'm sorry, but the lighting in this entryway is really horrible. But this is a bench that I have in my entryway, and it's actually a storage bench. So when you lift the seat, you can get to some storage, and that's actually where a lot of my knitted hats and other items live. But what I have here are the display mannequins that I use whenever I set up my booth at fiber festivals. And this is kind of a nice way, of storing those display mannequins and having them live in a place between fiber festivals. But also, instead of just having them basically be naked, I put shawls on them. So that way I can display the shawls. So this is in the entryway, so anyone coming to the house will see this. And also is a way that I can, like before, if I want to actually use the shawl, I can just grab it right here and put it on, and it's ready to go. I don't have to go dig it out of a box. So this is one way that I've found that's really helpful for displaying the shawls as well as storing these mannequins. I also have a third one down there. That's where I store one of my jackets, and then I've got a cowl on that one at the moment. So that is yet another example of how I both store and display the shawls. And I think that's really the secret with maybe thinking about storing shawls. Don't think of it as storage, but think of it as artwork that you actually want to share and display. And speaking of things to display, just to quickly show you, this is kind of my husband's little corner. I mean, I like it too, but this is a little alcove nook in our entryway, and we have made it into kind of a Star Wars type of thing there. So just wanted to show you that real fast. But anyway, so think of your shawls as art, and think of ways that you can display them rather than store them. So don't forget about the quarterly knit along that is happening on the Ravelry group for T-Shirts and Shawls. This quarter is just any shawl made with fingering weight yarn. We have several people who have posted what they plan to do and some in-progress pictures, and we have one FO already, and we've already had a prize winner. I did a random giveaway. The next person who posts a picture of your work in progress gets to win a skein of yarn, and it was a sparkly yarn that was won by Craft Mouse. So I will probably be doing something like that again, probably pretty soon. So you might want to join the knit along if you haven't already, or make sure that you are checking in so that way you can see when there are those random kind of giveaway types of posts. Plus, I just definitely want you guys to share your progress. My shawl that I'm working on for the knit along is the Charlatan. So you'll see that in the What I'm Knitting section. So I hope you will join us. So what have I been knitting for the past 2 weeks? I have mostly been focusing on one project, but I've kind of spread some of my knitting time out. So I'll start with the project that I've mostly been focusing on and then kind of work from there. So this is the beginnings, and it's all scrunched up on the needles, so it looks a lot smaller than it actually is. But this is the beginnings of Charlatan by Jenny Santo Designs. And this is a garter stitch body, and then after I complete this, which I think I have like 6 or 8 rows left of the body, then I change colors, and I actually left the yarn over there. It's a purple yarn. I think I showed it to you guys last time. So you change colors, and I need to look exactly at the directions to see how you do it, but I think you turn this around and you start in the middle, and you're actually kind of working to connect the next section to this body that way, and then there's a lace pattern on the edge. So I'm really excited about getting past this part and being able to add in the second color. So I'm hoping that you guys will get to see a lot more of that in next, I guess, 2 weeks. I want to say next week's episode, but the next episode in 2 weeks. So that's something I've really been having fun with. And since it's garter stitch and it's just increasing on the sides, it's something that I am able to knit while I'm reading. So I actually have gotten a fair amount of reading done in the past 2 weeks, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The next thing that I've worked on, I worked on it a lot more at the, like right after I filmed the last podcast, and then probably in the past week, I've not worked on this as much. This is, I think I showed you guys the start of this hat last time. So the name of this hat is escaping me. Checkerwork, the Checkerwork hat. So by Vexy, V-E-X-Y. And again, I link all the links to the patterns in the show notes. So this is really neat because it's self-striping yarn, and the way that the stitch patterns work out, it kind of breaks up those stripes so they're not just, you know, like you can see on the ribbed border where they're not just stripes. They actually create almost an entrelac type of look without actually having to do entrelac. So I'm really liking how this hat is turning out, but I haven't really been working on it as much as I probably really want to. So maybe once I get a little more past the Charlatan, I'll go back to working on on this hat. My Quaker yarn stretcher, I really should put a progress marker so I know exactly where I've, ended from the last podcast episode. I think I've probably knit like that much on it. Again, I've been spending a lot of time on Charlatan, so I know I worked on this a tiny bit, but not very much. And then finally, I have been working on, I'm really excited about this, I've been working on my Hitofeud. Still need to look up how to pronounce that. So this cardigan, and I have these needle keepers on here, so that's why this is not stretched out. So I have knit one full pattern repeat, which is 8 rows plus 3 more rows. So I've knit 13 rows, 8 plus 3, Karen, is 11. I've knit 11 rows on this, which has, it's a lot of stitches per row, which I think since I started filming the podcast, I have not picked up this project since then. So it has been almost 2 months since I've put some work into this project. And one of the things that I mentioned in the Facebook group, one of the things is every Monday, I'm asking you guys to have a goal for your knitting week. And it doesn't have to be a big goal, just make some type of goal, something you want to do that week. And the goal that I had for this week was to knit at least 1 pattern repeat on this project. And so that's, by creating that goal, that's how I got it done. So I've done 1 pattern repeat, and the week is just a little over halfway older, so I think that I will probably pick this up some more, probably tonight when we're doing our TV watching, and work some more on it. Now that I've kind of gotten it out of hibernation mode, I'm excited about it again, and I want to keep working on it. So those are the things that I've been knitting since I last talked to you guys. Just a quick little update on spinning. The Thursday that the last episode, so when episode 4 came out, was a spin night at my local yarn shop, which is the Knitting Fairy in Grand Prairie. And so I went to spin night, and my goal at spin night was to finish that purple fiber, which is, I believe it's 100% superwash merino. So to finish this purple fiber, dyed by 2F by hand, that I've been working on forever. I didn't look up on Ravelry when I actually started this project, but I know it's been on my wheel for a long time. So, and by finish, I just mean finish the single. So I have not actually plied this yet. I plan to chain ply it. And I still need to sit down and do the chain plying, but I have at least turned all the fiber into the singles. So that is all the spinning that I've done over the past 2 weeks. I know a lot of people have been doing a lot of spinning because the Tour de Fleece has been happening, and I haven't been participating in it this year, just mostly because I knew that I really didn't have time for this year. But I do want to make sure that I keep working on this project and go ahead and ply it and see what it becomes. So maybe next time it can be a finished object. I think maybe that will be my spinning goal, to finish this for the next podcast episode. So I have a couple of things that I've added to my stash over the past 2 weeks. I can't remember which episode it was, but I had mentioned that I joined 2 fiber clubs, and I got the first shipment for one of those clubs. This is from Elemental Fiberworks. And again, I will link to Elemental Fiberworks in the show notes. And the idea behind this, it's a fiber club, is that she's taken these posters that are from the NASA's Visions of Space. I can't remember exactly the name of the collection, but it's these posters that she's using as a inspiration for the color work, or the colors of the fiber. And so we actually get a little postcard with the image that was the inspiration. So you can see this one has a lot of colors, and is a really neat postcard. So you can collect the postcards as well as the fiber. So all those colors, and that turned into this really colorful, neat braid of fiber. So this is a BFL silk blend, so 75-25. And BFL silk is one of my favorite things to spin, so that's really exciting. I love spinning this fiber. And it will be fun to kind of see how these colors spin up. And I think if you actually look at the braid itself, you can see that the colors have a progression. So they're not just, randomly thrown onto the fiber. So what I will probably do is plan to spin this as a single to keep that color progression going, and then chain ply it. So that'll be my plan for this. And I've got a lot of fiber in my fiber stash, so I don't know if this will be one of the next things that I spin, because I do need to pick my next spinning project. So it might be spun fairly soon, or I might have it sit in the stash for a while. But she also included a note with the Fiber Club, and that talks a little bit about the poster, and a couple of other little goodies. There is this little sample here of, let's see, this is hand-dyed Bombyx silk top. So this really pretty green color. A couple of stickers, which it says adorable stickers of the sun from Pear Tea Stickers on Etsy. And then the postcard version of the Grand Tour. And there was also a lollipop. So it is actually an organic lollipop. It says Yum Earth. I've never heard of that, and I didn't realize that there were organic lollipops. It's a pomegranate flavor. So I'll have to give that a try and see how that is. So a nice little fun bag to get there, and I love being able to actually see the inspiration and get to keep that poster and keep it with the fiber, and then eventually the yarn that I spin up with it. So this is fun. The Yarn Club or Fiber Club is, even though she's going to be doing it over the course of the year, but you sign up for 3 months at a time. So right now, so this was the first one, so we'll get 2 more shipments. And then at the end of that time, basically the people that have been signed up will get the option, kind of first option to sign up for the second set of 3 months if you want to continue. And then any spots that are open, she will open up to anyone else that wants to join. So if you are interested in this Fiber Club, you only have to wait a little bit, wait, since this is the first month, I would assume she would open up, the club a little bit in advance of when the next cycle will begin. So it is not too late to join this Fiber Club. It's just not open currently. It will be open when she's ready to open it for the next 3 months. So that's exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next time. And supposedly the fiber is going to be different every time. So I love the BFL silk, but it'll be fun to see what else we get. And I'm over here looking to see my other thing that I wanted to show you. The other thing that I'm stashing is not yarn or fiber, but it is definitely tools that come in very handy for knitting. And if you've been on my Instagram page, you might have seen me post these stitch markers from time to time. They are done by Ann Tudor. So see if you can get her logo, and then Ann Tudor LLC, and I will again link to her site in the show notes. She is a glass artist, and she does, I think it's called lamp work, and creates stitch markers. And I have adorable sheep and a Christmas set of stitch markers and some cats. I love the cats that I have. And she recently had a sale, and I went ahead and took advantage of that for her newsletter subscribers, I think it was, and purchased a few more sets of stitch markers. So I have, and these decided that they don't want to show up very well, so I have these series of hearts. So each heart is a different color. So there you can kind of see some of the different colors. And again, these are glass, but they are very sturdy, and they're not very heavy at all. So it's really nice, and I love working with these. So series of hearts. And then I also got these adorable ladybugs. Look at how cute those are. So you've got the red ladybugs, and then I've got one orange one, so you can have the one different one to mark your beginning of the round. So love these little ladybugs. And then I couldn't resist these. These are super adorable cupcakes. Look at that. Isn't that cute? And she also has ice cream, and I almost got little ice cream cones, but I decided to do the cupcakes. So these adorable cupcakes. And the first set that I got of hers were sheep stitch markers, and she does, actually have them on a project. She does them in white with one black one as your beginning of round marker. So here is the cute little, oops, turned around, cute little sheep stitch marker. Sheepy sheep, yay! And she's just recently started doing these in different colors. So I think I'm probably gonna have to buy some more and get some different colored sheep because they are super adorable. Anyway, so a little bit of fiber from a fiber club and several stitch markers, which means I need to cast on lots of projects so I can use all these stitch markers. And that is what I've been stashing. So in the last episode, I talked about the book that I was reading, which was by Rachel Kane, a second book in a series. So this book was Paper and Fire. So Ink and Bone was the first one. It's the Great Library series, and I mentioned that. So I finished that book and really enjoyed it. Looking forward, I mean, it left on a big cliffhanger. So I'm really looking forward to the next one, which I have not looked at her website. I have no idea how long it'll be before the next one comes out. I don't really want to find out that it's going to be, forever before it comes out, so I haven't looked. And then I almost immediately started Rebel Magisters by Shanna Swenson, which is another second book in a series that I was really looking forward to. Rebel Mechanics is the first book. Highly recommend, this kind of steampunk alternate history type of thing. So I really enjoyed that first book and couldn't wait for the second book. So as soon as it was released, I think it was last week on Tuesday, I pre-ordered it, so it was on my Kindle, and I woke up early that morning and started reading it. And it didn't disappoint. I loved the book. And again, it's something that I'm like, oh, why did it end? I want to find out what happens next. And so I'm really excited about that book. But Shanna Swenson, I mentioned last time that she has another series called Enchanted Ink, and I really liked that series. And that series, I think 7 books. I should look that up to make absolutely sure, but she said basically that series was done, and it left the character. I mean, it tied up everything, so the series was ended, unless she had an idea for another book. So she wasn't planning on doing any more Enchanted Ink books, but, she wasn't going to completely close the door. And she announced on her blog, just I think this past week, that there's been a project that she's been working on that she's talked about in her blog, and mentioned, she doesn't want to give any details about it until she's written more of it and decides that it is really a viable idea and that it's going to be something she's going to release. So she announced it's a new Enchanted Ink book, and I'm really excited. And can't wait to see, what was this idea that was good enough basically for her to go back to that series. So that's actually what she's working on now. When she's done with that, she actually has this brand new idea for a young adult book, and she really hasn't said anything about it yet, but she said she wants to play with that idea to see if it's something she wants to work with. It's been occupying her head a lot, and so she needs to just get it out. And then after that, she'll be writing the third Rebel Mechanics book. So it means I have to wait a little bit for Rebel Mechanics, but hey, I get a new Enchanted Ink book and possibly another book in between. So that's good, since I really love her books. Anything that she releases, that's good. But I definitely cannot wait for the third Rebel Mechanics book. I want to find out what happens. And yeah, so that's what I've been reading. And I kind of I've been thinking a bit about these two books because they were both second books in a series, potentially trilogies. I'm not sure if how far the authors are continuing. But it kind of made me think a lot about second books because I was also editing, or actually doing a proofreading, on a second book of a trilogy. And the author, even though I'm proofreading, I'm not really looking at the content as much. The author did ask for my feedback on the book. And, because I'm reading it at a very different level when I'm proofreading, I had to think a little bit about what to say. And I realized that it was like the perfect second book. And second books are kind of the problem child in trilogies, I think. And I say that because really the first book is there to introduce this world, introduce these characters. And the final book in the trilogy, the third book, is used to resolve the overarching, conflict. I mean, each book should have its own, story arc. But the overall arching one is resolved in that third book. And the middle book is a bridge between those two books, the first and the third. And a lot of times the middle book is the least exciting, because you don't have that introduction, the newness anymore, but you also don't have that final battle that people have been working toward, whether it's a physical battle or a mental or emotional battle. And so that middle book sometimes just becomes, this place of gathering information, doing a lot of training, maybe traveling and preparing for that final conflict. And a lot of times, since the protagonist has learned something new about his or her world in that first book, it's also a way of that person kind of coming to terms with that part of his or her life. And I realized that the book that I had been proofreading, that's exactly what was going on in this second book. And I kind of thought about the two books, the Paper and Fire and then Rebel Magisters, since they were also second books. I thought about them, and I think the Rebel Magisters, there was definitely kind of gathering forces, getting the rebels together, basically, and gathering information, but it didn't quite feel the same as a second book, which I think is good, because the second books are usually my least favorites in trilogies. So it didn't have quite as much of that second book, the stuff that I don't like as much about the second book. With Paper and Fire, especially the first half of the book, it really was just about the characters gathering the information, trying to figure out, because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but trying to find the information they need to do the thing that they do in the second half of the book. And yeah, there was some character development, which is always good, but it does get bogged down a little bit. Still, I did enjoy the book for sure, but it's kind of a second book syndrome, I guess. You can kind of think of it that way. And I always think about the original Star Wars trilogy. Empire Strikes Back, it's my least favorite of the three. I definitely love Episode 4 and then Return of the Jedi. And Empire, I really don't watch as often. Really the only times that I watch it are if we are watching the entire trilogy, and so we need that middle one, but I never really pick it up to watch on its own, because it really is about the training and the coming to terms with who Luke is, and so I always kind of think of that as kind of the example of the second book. I know it's a movie, but the second part of a trilogy. So I just had lots of thoughts about second books as I was reading. I'm currently reading, I picked up a book called Stray, and the name of the author is escaping me. I will have to look that up and post that in the show notes. And it's a really intriguing kind of take on the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale in a way. But also putting it in a world that's kind of similar in idea to The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. where women have these very specific paths and roles that they fulfill in life, and to become, in this book, to become a stray is to completely leave this civilized life, and to live outside that. And I'm just in the beginning of this book, but I'm already finding the creation of the world pretty fascinating. Just as an FYI, The Handmaid's Tale is one of my favorite books, and I actually taught it multiple times in my college classes, especially like intro to literature types of classes. And so I think that I'll really enjoy this book, but I'm not far enough into it to really know for sure now. So I will keep reading it and let you guys know next time what I think about it. So I have something to talk about with what I'm watching. Since it's summer, a lot of my usual shows are on hiatus. So my husband and I just started watching something that came out on Netflix, one of the Netflix originals, called Stranger Things. And maybe you've seen it or heard of it. We are on episode 4, so we're still kind of in the beginnings of it. It is a little bit horror, a little bit maybe sci-fi, a little bit mystery, and it is set in the 1980s I think it's in Indiana. So it's got a lot of 80s nostalgia, I guess nostalgia. Some of the things not so nostalgic for, like some of the clothes. There's one character who wears these really high-waisted pants. Whew. Anyway, but so far it's been a good show, one that it's been hard to kind of turn off each evening when it's time to go to bed. So definitely something that I see us probably finishing by this weekend. That's the one thing I like about the Netflix shows, that you get to binge watch and see all the episodes. So Stranger Things, I've really been enjoying it so far, and I hope that it continues to be as good as these first few episodes have been. So that's what's been going on the past 2 weeks. I have some things coming up. I have someone that I know in the local community is doing a trunk show at my local yarn shop on Saturday. So I am planning to go to that, and I will try to remember to take some pictures and then put it down on my list of things to talk about in the next podcast episode. So that way I can share that with you. And so I'm looking forward to going to that. And I have a couple of just small updates for my designing and yarn dyeing. So if you would like to hear about those, just keep watching. And if you're not interested in hearing those updates, then it's okay to turn off the podcast now. You won't miss anything if you don't watch the last little bit. So thank you so much for joining me. If you like the podcast, I would love to hear your feedback on it. You can leave comments on YouTube or a review on iTunes, or definitely come to the Ravelry group. So T-Shirts and Shawls podcast on Ravelry, and come discuss the episode in the episode 5 discussion thread. So if you want to stay on and hear some updates, keep watching. Otherwise, I will see you guys in 2 weeks. So for my designing, I have designing's been on hold for a while. I have that cowl that I showed you guys a while back. I have the outline written up for the pattern. I have the chart written up. I just need to sit down and actually write it. It will probably take me less than half an hour, but for some reason I just haven't taken that half an hour. So I need to just sit down and do it. Once I've done that, then I'll look for test knitters and kind of move that process forward. Been thinking about the next thing to design, and I think it was the first podcast episode I brought out a green shawl that I'd been working on and mentioned that I'd kind of gotten to the point where I realized I was going to have to chart out every single row of this shawl, which would make massive charts in this huge long pattern. And I needed to decide if I was going to continue with that or if I wanted to maybe rip it out, go back to the drawing board, and come up with something else. So I've been thinking about that one recently, and I realized that the reason I haven't been working on it is because I really don't want to chart out and write out every single row. I think that's just I've done that before, and I really don't want to do that again. So I just finally came to the realization I need to rip it out, go back to the drawing board, and come up with a new idea. And I actually do have a new idea to kind of take the original idea and just make some changes to it, so that way it won't be quite as much of a hassle to write out and then to knit, because if you have to look at the pattern for every single stitch of every single row, that makes for a really tedious knit. So I've got an idea, so I just need to physically get that shawl out, rip it out. Actually, I need to find the shawl first. Rip it out, and then sit down, come up with a new plan, and then start over on that. So that's kind of my next goal for designing. So that's why there really hasn't been that much that has happened. I released, the Fafner hat, that men's hat, and getting a good response on that. So thank you guys for favoriting it, and especially for those of you who've bought it. Looking forward to seeing new versions of that hat show up. But otherwise, I just need to sit down and do some work. And hopefully I'll have some more updates for designing on the next podcast. For Roundtable Yarns news, I have a lot that's been going on kind of behind the scenes. I actually have my first wholesale order that I have been working on. It's a person who found me at the Houston Fiber Festival. She basically does not have a physical location, so not a local yarn shop. She actually travels around to all the different fiber festivals, and she said that she travels 11 out of 12 months of the year, and goes to lots of different events. Her business name is Threads and You, so EWE, and she also sells fabric and sewing types of things. So she hits festivals that are both fiber festivals as well as like quilting types of festivals. So that's kind of exciting that she's going to be getting my yarn and taking it with her on her travels. So perhaps if you are at a festival that she is in attendance at, then you'll be able to actually see Roundtable Yarns. So I will be sure to link to her website in the show notes, so that way you can see her upcoming travel and show plans. So that way, if it is a show that is near you, then you can go check out the yarn. Her first order, she ordered Merlin, so the self-striping, Camelot, which is a fingering weight merino cashmere nylon blend, which is the best seller, and the new Tristan sport weight, so 100% superwash merino that just takes colors like a dream. I love dyeing that stuff. So those are the three bases that she ordered, and I just this morning finished that order. So I had finished dyeing it a couple of days ago, and then I have to do the rescanning and labeling and all that. So I just finished that this morning, and she will actually be on her travels coming through this area, so she'll be picking it up on Saturday and taking it to her next event, which I need to look up to see what that next event is, but coming up very soon. So again, I will link to her website on the show notes, so that way you can check it out. Also, I do, just as a reminder for those of you in the Dallas area, I have yarn at the Knitting Fairy, which is in Grand Prairie, just off of 360 north of I-30. So if you are in the area, you can go to that yarn shop and find my yarn. Currently, I have Merlin, again, the self-striping, Camelot, merino cashmere nylon. Those will probably always be at the shop, and then I usually have a third base that I kind of rotate, and right now I have Guinevere. So that is a fingering weight 2-ply, which is fantastic for like shawls that have lace stitch patterns. So if you're in the area, check out Knitting Fairy. If you're not in the area, check out the Threads and You website to see which events she's going to and where you might be able to find some of the Roundtable yarns. So that's exciting. I am also going to start exploring other wholesale options. So in particular, other yarn shops, and not just in my area. I actually want to, expand that outside the Dallas area. So if you are a local yarn shop owner, or if you have a local yarn shop that you enjoy and you think that Round Table Yarns might fit with that shop, have the owner get in touch with me, Karen at roundtableyarns.com, and we can talk about wholesale options. The other thing that I'm working on, I just shared this with my newsletter, which just came out on Tuesday. I have been thinking about creating mini skein options to go along with my self-striping sock yarn. So that way you could use the mini skein to do your heels and your toes. So that way it won't break up that self-striping pattern. I know there are heels that you can do that will help keep your self-striping, but for me, I like to do, cuff down socks in the traditional, heel flap and gusset, which really doesn't always work with the self-striping. So having a coordinating matching color that could actually go with it, so that you can do a solid heel, and then also, if you wanted to, the toe, I thought would be fun. I know other dyers obviously do this. It's not a new idea. But I'm excited about the opportunity. So I actually had a poll that I asked my newsletter subscribers to respond to, asking, so two main things I need to decide. How big should these mini skeins be? So 20 grams or 25 grams, because I've seen both. I kind of looked around to see the other people who are offering these mini skeins, and it seemed to be kind of evenly divided between 20 or 25. I will say that my yarn supplier that I get that particular base from offers mini skeins already, created in the 20 gram version. For 25 grams, I would have to take either a cone or skeins of the yarn and wind them off myself. So from a pure kind of work point of view, the 20 gram skeins are a little bit easier since I can get those already prepared. But I just want to make sure that 20 grams is enough, if you want to do a heel and toe. You don't have to do socks with the mini skeins if you wanted to do another project. So that was the first question, 20 grams or 25 grams. And so far, it seems to be split. It's almost 50-50, and as soon as one option seems to start going up, someone else comes along and votes the other way, and so that one's kind of balanced. So I really need to decide which way to go there. My other question was, do you want these packaged together with the self-striping? So say I have Sword in the Stone, which is a yellow, black, and gray, and maybe I have a black as the mini skein. Do you want it actually together in one package that, has one label around it and you get both of them? Or would you prefer for me to have the self-striping here and then a bunch of mini skeins over here, and you can pick out which color you want to go with your self-striping? So that way, maybe you want to do something completely different. Or maybe you do want to pick one of the colors that is in the self-striping already to do as your heel and toe. So you want to package together or package separately. And that one, it does seem like the package separately is winning, I guess. Does seem to be the majority, although it's not not a runaway. A lot of people do seem to like the idea of having them packaged together. So right now I'm leaning toward creating them as separate, so that way you can mix and match. But I might, especially like online on Etsy, I might actually have a listing that has the self-striping skein with the mini skein. So I might do that, and then at fiber festivals have the separate mini skeins. That way, if you want to do mini skein projects that are not necessarily related to socks, you can just get the mini skeins and have those. And then some of the comments that I've been receiving so far with the survey have been, oh, I'd love to see a mini skein gradient kit. There are lots of dyers that are doing that right now. So that's also another option that I can consider with using these mini skeins. So I have mini skeins on the mind, basically. So that's what I've been kind of working on and thinking about the best ways to offer those that are going to honestly be somewhat easy on me, but also don't want to just look at what's easy on me. I want to see what's best for you guys. What do you want? And if you really want 25 gram skeins and I have to, wind those off myself, then that's what I'll do. Definitely want to help you guys out and not give you 20 gram skeins when you really just need that little bit extra. So if you're on my newsletter, my mailing list, if you haven't already answered that survey, please find the link and go answer it. I would love to get your feedback. And if you're not on my newsletter, you can go ahead and subscribe. Actually, if you go to KarenDawnDesigns.com/signup, I think is the link, and I will have this in the show notes. You can subscribe to the mailing list, and you should be able to then see an archive and get the newsletter that just came out on Tuesday. You can get all the information in the newsletter, and then you can also get the link to the survey. There is a giveaway that goes along with the survey. If you answer, I think by the end of the day tomorrow, because I'm drawing on Saturday morning, I'm going to give away a skein of Merlin, the self-striping, plus a mini skein that goes with it. So I guess I'm going to need to decide the 20 or 25 grams really soon so I can give it to the giveaway winner. So that is what is going on with Roundtable Yarns. And so I think now that I have finished the wholesale order, I can start really thinking about the mini skeins and how that's going to work. So I hope to have those ready to go at the trunk show that I will be doing at the Knitting Fairy for the DFW Yarn Crawl, which is starts August 19th. I think that's the date, 18th or 19th, and it runs for a little over a week. So that's coming up, and I will be sure to tell you guys more about it as we get a little bit closer. So probably the next episode, since it'll be 2 weeks from now. So yeah, lots of stuff going on with Roundtable Yarns, lots of color exploration for future yarn clubs. I'm also working on that. So if you're not on my email newsletter list and you want to get more information, that's the best place to get the updates for what's happening with the yarn and the designs. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful 2 weeks, and happy knitting!